Welcome back to the Talking Archive. My name is Josh Jacobs, and our conversation continues now with Dave Berg, longtime producer of The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, as well as producer at NBC News. So now after all these smaller markets, how'd you make it to the big time?
Well, then after I left the Midwest after being there for about 12 to 15 years, and I got a job as the executive producer, and then I went on to become the news director at KOVR Television in Sacramento. And that was a really good market to be in. It was great because that you got the capital of California. We covered the state news. Jerry Brown was the governor, if you can believe it, at that time.
I remember.
Governor Moonbeam is what we called him. But he was an interesting man. But, however, the most powerful, the NBC affiliate in Sacramento was the single most powerful affiliate station at NBC in the country. And so I became good friends with the news director there. Not for any other reason than that we became friends.
Was that KCRA by chance?
Yes. It was KCRA. What a powerhouse. I was at KOVR. And when a job opened up for a field producer writer at NBC Network News in Burbank, and he said, "Would you like that job?"
Wow.
And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay." And then the next day he said, "Okay, you have the job." And I said, "Don't I have to go do an interview?" And he said, "Yeah, but you're just going through the motions." That's how powerful he was.
Wow.
And so I did. I came down to do my job interview, and I remember talking to the bureau chief and the assistant bureau chief, and they had both gone to Northwestern as I had.
Wow.
And they said, "So do you follow?" They said, I looked at them and I said, "How about them Wildcats?" And they said, "Oh yeah, don't talk about it," because Northwestern traditionally was a losing team. And that was the extent of our conversation. How maybe someday the Wildcats would get better. That's how I got my job. It was a lot harder getting that job than trying to get an internship in Chicago.
Wow. Now, who was it that hired you at NBC in Burbank?
NBC News. It was Bob Eaton, who went on to become a powerful executive at ESPN.
Wow. So how was the NBC News operation in Burbank? Because we know about KNBC Channel 4 locally. How much interaction did NBC News Burbank have with KNBC Channel 4?
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good question. By the way, they're all in Universal City now. The NBC, the iconic NBC facility in Burbank, it's no longer there. I mean, it's there, but it doesn't have NBC.
No.
But it was basically NBC Network News, pretty much leached off of KNBC.
Wow.
Whatever footage they got. Basically, what we did is we covered the Western United States, often taking footage from the affiliates and certainly from KNBC. So the relationship was often we took from them, the local, because they had crews out everywhere every day.
And they were a very top-rated news source. You had great reporters there like John Schubeck, Paul Moyer, Tricia Toyota. Pat Sajak was the weatherman at the time. You had Stu Nahan with sports. And so you had a lot of legends there.
And actually, I did work with them. They would put together. We would put together stories like for the Today Show. And some of them I had worked with in other markets, from smaller markets. Kent Shocknick and some others. But Stu Nahan, you mentioned, was a great sports guy.
Oh, yeah.
And he had been a hockey player, by the way.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Been an NHL player. And Stu Nahan, when he did his reports, he did them off the top of his head.
Wow. That's amazing. It's funny you mention that because Bob Wright had mentioned when he was with KNBC4 back in the 60s, Chick Hearn was the sports reporter there back then, before Ross Porter had become the reporter. And he said that Chick Hearn pretty much did the same thing. He had the sports scores in front of him, but everything else he ad-libbed. Yeah.
Yep. I that doesn't surprise me.
And I actually know Stu Nahan's nephew, Bruce Nahan, who works in the industry. So I never unfortunately got to meet Stu, but I have met I do know his nephew. So so I get a little bit of an extension of Stu right there, but I guess it's just never the same, is it?
Yeah, but no, there was some really good talent at KNBC, and we took advantage of them. At NBC Network, you know, whatever the big stories were, we would use their footage for our national reports. Of course, we had our own crews as well, but we drew heavily upon what they did.
And with it was a huge studio. I remember taking a tour several times, and there were numerous productions going on around there. Who are some stars you got to meet that you have not met otherwise, that you were like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I met this person today?
Well, I ended up, that happened when I, signed on with The Tonight Show. So that's where I mostly met celebrities. But when I was with NBC News, I met a lot of, people from the political world and some celebrities because I also worked for The Today Show.
Oh, okay.
And I would book guests on the Today Show, but it was nothing like working at The Tonight Show.
Now, when you worked on the Today Show, how often did you have to get up at 2 or 3 in the morning? Because since today is actually live 4 a.m. our time to about 6 a.m. our time.
Pretty frequently. Yeah, pretty frequently, because that's what we did. If you were working on the West Coast, we were on Pacific time. The East Coast was 3 hours ahead, right? Mm-hmm. So that was not unusual.
Wow.
And back the way, this is maybe too much inside baseball, but back then, you as the producer, you set it up, you booked it, you were there, you went there to make sure that the guest was taken care of. If they had any questions, you made sure everything went pretty smoothly. Today, when they do satellite shots for both cable and I think probably, I don't know, maybe broadcast also, you just go in as the guest and they put you in a little room and you just sit down in a little room. And a sound guy comes and puts an earpiece and gives you a mic.
And back then you were basically just looking at a camera. Today you might be able to see a monitor so you could actually see the subject who's interviewing you. But back then you're just pretty much looking at a camera, assuming that somebody's on the other end talking to you.
Actually, today, most of the time, I know this because once I, was finished with The Tonight Show and wrote a book, and I myself made many appearances on television, you actually didn't have any, you don't have any feedback. You go in this little room, they put a little smiley face under the camera, and you have an earpiece, and it's a dark room.
Oh, wow.
So the funny thing is, the first time I did one of those interviews, and I remember when I was a Today Show producer, the big thing you had to deal with often is the guests, even if they were actors or famous celebrities, they were nervous about making appearances. Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of, don't worry, it'll be fine, you can relax. Jane Pauley is easy to work with, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But then when I sat in the interviewee seat and I was being interviewed, I was scared out of my gourd. And I remember the first time I did it, my wife watched from home. It was a Fox News interview, Fox and Friends.
Oh yeah.
And when I was coming home in the limo, I called her and said, well, how did he do? And she said, you were awful. You looked like a deer in the headlights. I'm coming. Next time you do interviews, I'm coming with you. And she did.
Wow.
Every interview I did after that, she would sit next to the camera and do like a happy face. She would, smile, meaning smile more.
Wow.
Don't be so serious. So anyway, again, I'm going way off track.
Oh,
aren't I?
No, that's fine. Cause I mean, it's neat to hear stories like that because, it's for somebody listening right now who might have an opportunity like that. It's good for them to know what to do, what not to do. And, so, hey, it's a great lesson.
Yeah. And the other thing you really, really, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you really have to focus on just looking at the camera, because if you look over to the side, you look like you're shifty-eyed.
That's right, yeah. I guess it's kind of like when you're doing a radio interview and you're wanting to shift your face to whoever you're talking to rather than continue to stay on the microphone. It can sound like you're talking off into the distance and turning away when, in person you're thinking, oh gosh, I'm just looking at the radio personality. That's why I tell everybody in the studio, wear your headphones so you can hear yourself. Otherwise you're going to sound terrible and you're not going to be able to tell what your actual voice is because you're going to be maybe looking away. That'll force you to stay on the microphone, then just kind of move your eyes instead of move your neck, if you will, or move your head.
Well, there was a great interview who I know you know, Frank Pastore.
Yes.
Who, when I used to do his show, during the commercial break, he would say, "Stop turning your head. Stop it."
Oh, gosh, I miss Frank. I think I remember him doing that, with other guests too, I think. So you're bringing back some memories. And I was only his producer for about, the last 7 months of his radio program. Yeah. We'll get to Frank, after we talk about the, Tonight Show. So you were with NBC News in Burbank for how many years then?
Between NBC News in Burbank, which I was there about 7 years, and then another 3 years as the bureau chief at CNBC, the West Coast bureau chief. Mm-hmm. I was with NBC News for 10 years.
Okay. Now, what did you do for CNBC? Because it was a pretty new operation back then and a lot different of a network, I guess, than it is today. What was the format back then compared to now?
Well, what I basically did for CNBC is I helped launch it. Helped create the format, what we were doing, and I launched it basically running their West Coast operations. And yes, it was a lot different. They called it it's CNBC, but it was the Consumer News and Business Channel. And they were really experimenting, doing a lot of, I think, really sort of stupid shows in the evenings that I was sort of involved in putting together. It's run much better today, I think.
Yeah, I remember they were kind of like, in fact, I remember they had the CNBC Talk All Stars, and I forget who they were exactly, but I guess, when it first gets off the ground, there's all these mistakes you kind of make, and that's part of the process and the journey of the whole thing. Now, I remember reading your book, Behind the Curtain, Look Inside Jay Leno's Tonight Show. I'm probably getting the title here wrong, but
no, you're getting it right.
Oh, okay, good. Because I've read the book, and you had been let go from NBC News around the time that Johnny Carson retired. Tell us about what happened there and how that led to going to Tonight.
Yeah, so how I got the job at the Tonight Show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're right. I had some differences of opinion with CNBC, and they fired me. We can call it creative differences, but I thought they had their management was a little weak. And they could have improved their programming, and I was probably too vocal about it. And so I was fired from CNBC. But they were kind enough to let me, stay in the office. They gave me like a 6-month severance, and they said I could stay in the office because it's easier to get a job if you have the appearance that you're working.
Mm.
So I was at CNBC, but not working there. I was at their, basically using the office and their number to try to get other jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I also remember sort of, one day thinking, here I am at NBC, and I don't even know who's down the hallway from me. I really don't, because you just go to your office and, I don't know where the research department is or the ratings department or the sales department. I didn't know where any of those things were. So I thought, I'm just going to walk down the hallway. I'm just curious. Who's in the office, at the end of the hallway? And I'm walking down the hallway, and it says, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. And I thought, wait a minute. 3 doors down is the new Tonight Show? I can't believe this. So I went back to the office, and I called my wife, Mary, and I said, you'll never believe who our new neighbor is down the hallway. And I told her, and she said, well, that's great. What are you going to do now? And I said, I'm going to hang up and, keep looking for work. And she said, no, just hang up and you don't have to call anybody to look for work. All you have to do is walk down and ask for Jay Leno. And I said, you don't really understand. That's like a completely different thing than I'm doing. I'm not in the entertainment business. I'm in the news business. So I don't think I'm going to go down there and talk to Jay. And she goes, well, what's it going to hurt? So like all good husbands, I said, yeah, you're right, honey. I will call, right? Well, I had no intention. I said, yeah, I'll go down the hallway and talk to them, which I had no intention of doing because I felt intimidated because I, having worked at NBC for 10 years, I was there when Johnny Carson was there. I was there when Johnny would walk past you in the hallway, right? I was there when I thought, wow, am I supposed to bow down? What am I supposed to do? Johnny Carson was royalty.
Oh, yeah.
No, he wasn't an arrogant man. Don't get me wrong. It's just we all respected him so much, And it's like, wow, the Tonight Show. I don't think so. The idea that I would work there was completely not even in my radar. It just wasn't. And people who can remember the days of Johnny Carson know what I'm talking about. It was just in a class by itself. So anyway, meanwhile, and I'll try to shorten the story. Meanwhile, my wife continued to call me almost every hour on the hour to ask about, if I had gone down to check with Jay Leno. And it gets to be, it's like 4:00, and she calls, and I said, oh, yeah, I know. You want to know if I went down to see Jay? And she said, yeah, I do. I said, you know what? It's 4:00. We're at the end of the day. I'm going to go down there. I'm going to go down there first thing tomorrow morning. Don't worry. I promise. She said, well, why don't you just go down now? And I said, they're at the end of their day. They're probably really busy. She goes, oh, okay. Did you want to come home for dinner tonight or just go to McDonald's? What did you want to do? Yeah. And I said, okay, yeah. All right, well, thank you. I'll think about that. And then I thought, well, what's more intimidating? Going home and saying, gee, I didn't have the guts to go down and apply for a job to earn money for the family. I didn't have the guts to do that, or go and face the people at the Jay Leno show. So I went down to the Jay Leno office because that was less intimidating. And I walk in, and there's a receptionist there, and I said, "Hi, I'm here for a job. I work down there at CNBC. I'm a news guy." I didn't even know what jobs you apply for at a show like that. I just wasn't sure. And she said, "Well, what did you do there?" And I said, "Well, I've been a bureau chief. I've been a reporter. I've been a writer. been a producer. She said, good, okay, well, fill out an application for a producer and for a writer. Oh, okay, I'll do that. So I fill it out, sign it, turn it in, and she goes, now, by this time, I went in there at 4:45. By this time, it's 4:55, and I turn in the application. She goes, well, congratulations to you. What? I got the job? She goes, no, you're the last person from whom we're accepting an application because applications close at 5 p.m.
Whoa.
So I'm kind of glad I went down there, you know?
Yeah.
So I went home that night, and I got to have dinner at home. But what happened is, as I'm leaving the office after I filled out the application, the executive producer was there at the time. Her name was Helen Kushnick.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting to leave the office, and I hear her from, her voice coming for her office. She goes, whoa, where are you going? I said, well, I'm leaving because I filled out the application. She said, you come in here. I'm looking for a news person to be a producer because we really want more guests that can talk about news. We don't just want Hollywood celebrities. So we had a very nice conversation. I gave her my ideas that they shouldn't only get newsworthy people, but sports stars, Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, and expand out controversial figures like Rush Limbaugh, who've never done late night, that have huge audiences. Mm-hmm. And she's buying all this, and she said, I like all these ideas. So I go home that night. Mary said, well, how did it go? And I said, I not only applied, I think I might get the job. She said, honey, it's the Tonight Show. You'll never get a job there. I said, but you told me to go there, or you weren't going to give me dinner. And she said, no, I just wanted you to build up your confidence so you could, you could move on and not hesitate to apply for other jobs. 2 days later, I got the job. 2 days later, I'm in the office shaking hands with Jay Leno.
Wow. This is the Talking Archive. My name is Josh Jacobs. We're talking with Dave Berg, longtime producer of The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. And we just heard about him getting the job all of a sudden. And next time we'll talk about the pre-production process leading up to Jay Leno taking over tonight from Johnny Carson's retirement.